Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Bob Liodice, Chief Executive Officer of the ANA. Bob, it is always a pleasure to see you, and I'm really looking forward to talking about this year because it seems that of all years, there's a lot going on. So welcome to the show.
It's always a delight to be with you, Deb. And yeah, we've got an interesting year coming up as we leave a very interesting year behind.
Interesting. Okay, may you live in interesting times. We will get to that a little bit more, but
Sure.
let's start with something that seems to be on everybody's mind, or at least a topic. You can't have a conversation without these two little letters popping in. But the ANA's word of the year for the third time
Right.
was AI. And your members, again, 2 years in a row has seen that as obviously very important to them. So let's start with, is AI fundamentally changing the marketing business?
The short answer is yes, without question. And it will continue to change not only the marketing business, but all businesses. But let's stick with marketing. That's what we're talking about. AI is minimally going to change the entire productivity scale. What we do can be done so much faster, so much easier, so much more productively, because there is a tool that marketers are rapidly learning how to use in order to make all of those attributes happen. And the beauty of AI is that this isn't a tool that is promising something. It is a tool that is delivering quite a bit and is growing exponentially in terms of its capability and its overarching power. We have seen data which suggests that the overall increment in that productivity is nearing 10% in the 2 years or so that generative AI has been in with the marketplace. But what I love about the concept is it's just not only going to help you write text better, but it's going to help you imagine better. It's going to help widen the lens for how you think about delivering your core messages to your consumers and to your customers. And that's what I enjoy about it, is that you can play with it, you can enhance it, you can dabble with it in such a way that I think your own range of options for how you want to prosecute it going forward will pass a lot of muster and give you greater capability to be a better marketer. Now, with that, the caveat is, will it lead to better brand performance? And the answer is, we're not going to know that until we see the entire marketplace filled. What does that mean? Well, if everybody uses AI, then the landscape continues to rise for everybody. So the ability to gain a competitive advantage, even a temporary one, will be something that we will have to see. So I think we can guarantee that there will be productivity improvements. And I guarantee that we will add to the financial benefits that that productivity will provide. But a brand's performance in the marketplace will be very interesting to see. I'm still waiting to see whether in fact that takes place. And I liken that to the digital and social marketing boom back in the 2010 decade. When that happened, everybody got very, very excited for some of the similar reasons. But once everybody became digital and social marketers, the playing field leveled out, and the ability to gain that competitive advantage passed into the night. So we all raised the bar, but we did not necessarily perform that much better. And that was evidenced by the growth figures in the decade of 2010, which in fact was actually slightly lower than the previous decade. So the era of AI is still to be determined, but there is reason to be enthusiastic about it. and reason to be very hopeful that it will lead to better performance.
That's interesting. Let me just make a couple of quick comments,
Sure.
because you said some things that are pretty stunning. One of the statistics that I find very interesting that you've kind of alluded to is that there seems to be now additional ad spend, but what's declining is return on advertising investment. So it seems that people are spending more, but they're getting less effective results. So that's kind of interesting. That goes
To a degree, but they're getting more productive with the investments that they're making. So does that mean that they can reduce the amount of investment in people, processes, agencies, infrastructure? Over time, they probably can, because you can write something in 10 minutes when it used to take you 10 hours. So those kinds of advantages certainly take place. Whether the brands are performing that much better is still to be determined. We've not necessarily seen runaway trains in terms of brands improving their delivery to consumers just because you're using greater portions of AI. So I can't so totally say that the growth measures are in and have been calibrated. They are in for digital and social marketing, and we're finally learning how to take advantage of that. But AR, it's still, I think, a TBD. Optimism prevails, but still a TBD about that return on investment.
Well, it's interesting because at Masters this year, you showed, or you had some of your speakers show some stunning examples
Right.
of how they're using AI, and you talk about how AI is actually delivering as opposed to promising. And I think we've all heard the promises of personalization, and
Right.
now there's more of the delivery on that. Your speakers, from L'Oreal and Mars with their
Yes.
pet foundation, the Pedigree Pet Foundation, and how quickly they offered shelter dogs home and took them down when they were taken home. And it was just extraordinary. Now, those are very sophisticated examples, and
Yes.
they are big global players with big investments. The Internationalist recently did a quick study on how average marketers were using AI, and they were very open, and they admitted that most of them felt that they were really at the very early stages. I think
Mhm.
this was the year when everybody experimented personally,
Right.
and it's not yet been institutionalized or cut across the silos, or the data from here going to the data to marketing for AI usage or whatever it might be. But they all said that they really could use greater, what we termed, capability building. They needed to learn more. And I thought that was a terrific role for the ANA to play. So I
Yeah.
know that you're doing a bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, and it goes to the way the ANA looks at a particular area. The ANA focuses in on 8 specific areas: brand, media, data, technology, measurement, inclusive marketing, B2B, talent. And technology, particularly AI, is a major focus. And we've taken a very wide lens in how we are working to improve our delivery to our members. And that takes a full-throated approach. And we built a team to be able to bring that delivery to our members. And, like any kind of learning, you learn by continuously immersing yourself in the subject material. And that's why we take a wide lens. We provide national conferences, regional conferences, training and development, whether it's online or face-to-face, webinars, podcasts, a ton of content that we've created, like various playbooks and compendiums of case studies. The amount of delivery that we've ramped up in about a year and a half is quite substantial. So any member of the ANA has the ability to immerse themselves through whatever vehicle they feel the most comfortable with. Um, but the reality is that the use cases are rapidly expanding. And, we're an industry that learns from each other. So the ability to tap into what those case studies are saying and how various marketers are using them is very, very instructional, and you can ramp up pretty quickly. The thing that you point out is something that we use as kind of a little internal, informal benchmark. Because you're right, many of the big companies they put quite a substantial level of investment because they do see the power and the potential of what it can be done. We like to measure ourselves through the lens of the small to medium sized marketers because those are the ones that struggle because they don't have enough personnel or they don't have necessarily dedicated agency resources to be able to help themselves out. That's where the ANA can truly make a very, very big difference, especially since 50% of our members are small marketers that spend $5 million dollars a year or less on advertising and marketing. And to those, there is that wide compendium of resources that they can tap into. And they're only growing. Our plans for 25, we double down on it. And we not only double down because it's logical, but we did a survey last year among 500 members that we received responses for, as well as 60 individual industry leaders that we tapped into for their knowledge and expertise. And very, very interestingly, the most demanded items by our members and those in the industry are in three large buckets: data and data excellence, technology, including AI and MarTech, and measurement. And essentially, they were telling us, hey, we like where you're going, but we need a hell of a lot more. And that's part of the reason we've stepped up our investment in all three of those particular areas to ratchet up our ability to serve members for what excellent looks like. Now, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and we have many, many different types of individuals that we serve, whether they're brand marketers or multicultural marketers or digital and social managers, et cetera. So we need that wide lens because everybody has very different needs, from junior marketer to CMO. Our membership is really three-dimensional, and we have to cover a lot of areas in order to provide that value. And that's why we've stepped up our efforts in all of them, because they do make a difference. And you see that. You see marketers paying far more attention to data quality and what it is that they need in order to be able to make better marketing decisions. You see them in their abilities at trying to establish measurement techniques that will help them understand their returns on their investments, as we were talking about just a few minutes ago. And then combined with the technological areas that we're spending a lot of time with, you're seeing the marketer community becoming increasingly sophisticated. And that's fundamentally important because if you think about the universe of technology outside the scope of members, and those include agencies and the ad tech community and the SSPs that are out there, the publishers, the sophistication at the technological level can be mind-numbing. And if you aren't on your game as a marketer, you're going to be left in the dust. And it's critical for every marketer, whether you're from a large company or a small one, to work their hardest at staying current and immersing themselves within these rapid developments. They are mind-numbing, but if you stay immersed, you can do well, you can speak the language, you can make the decisions as to how you want to continue to get smarter and how to educate your teams. You know, one of the things I've always been critical about the marketing industry is we keep talking about people are most important assets. Well, there's a lot of inconsistency in there in terms of training and development, be it at the junior level or even in the leadership level, and how they're growing and expanding and making themselves and their teams even more capable. So I know I covered a lot of ground there. We may have even covered some of what you wanted to talk about, but I wanted to put that out there as a predicate for how the industry needs to continue to evolve.
No, you make some really important points, because I mean, we've talked for ages about how how marketing is a combination of science and art. But I think that we're increasingly seeing the importance of, for lack of a better term, the science part of this. And because responsible companies have to begin to show results,
Right.
and there's much of that, and marketing has to become part of that, if they're not already. I'm starting to wonder. I wanted to just go back for a second because we said both 24 and 25 are interesting. I just wonder. I would like to ask you if there was something pivotal in 24 that you think has really shaped the industry. But I'm also wondering, before I even get those words out, if AI is going to be the word of the year for the next 10 years. I don't know.
Well, if we come out of 24, there were a lot of things that took place. I mean, in the political world, it was the year of Trump, who is certainly going to influence the landscape going forward. We had the Summer Olympics in Paris, which were a game-changing event in terms of events, as well as, I think, a very robust coverage on how that took place. But we saw some things evolve in a very intelligent manner. I think that the concept of transparency is moving to a new level. We kind of tickled it a little bit in 2023 when we did our programmatic media work on transparency. And we followed that up in 2024 with a collaboration with Tag TrustNet, where we've done essentially a benchmarking study. We just recently released a report on the outcome of that, which essentially was taking a group of marketers. We have up to 40 that we are working with now, at least through Tag TrustNet, to apply the lessons learned that came out of the programmatic study. And what we found out was that there was a dramatic increase because of the principles that were now being espoused. Just the easy ones are that the MFAs, made for advertising sites, the usage went down from 15% of impressions down to 6% of impressions. And that the number of websites used in a campaign, an average number of websites, dropped precipitously from 44,000 down to 23,000. Now, those influenced the amount of productivity that is now coming out of the system. We said in the study that there would be approximately 25% savings. And what we're finding among the various participants is that in fact is being realized anywhere from 20% up. And so by peeling back the onion and improving that level of transparency, you can get at a higher rate of programmatic media spend on the open web. We still have the walled gardens to be able to pursue in the future. Another interesting area, a great development that deserves conversation, is in the area of DEI. And much of that came out of the 2023 Supreme Court decision, which basically, I would say, obliterated affirmative action as a vehicle for entrance into colleges and universities. And what many corporations have seen is essentially an increased hesitancy in their policy making is how they approach DEI. Now, we have to be very careful about this because diversity, equity, inclusion are concepts that I think we all hold near and dear. Number one, just in a philosophical way. From an empirical way, we know that a more diverse organization is far more productive and yields better performance. So that equation holds. What we as an industry have to be careful about is the appearance of quotas and targets. Those are the things that we should not be doing. We shouldn't be saying an organization should have a certain amount of percentage of diversity or of a target of various cultures to say, or even gender for that matter, that an organization should be essentially colorblind when it comes to the makeup of its staff. But if it places an emphasis on diversity, ensuring that its organization is diverse, it will yield better results. So what unfortunately has happened is a lot of the rhetoric has conflated both of those together, both the philosophy and the target setting, and say, oh, everybody's running away from that. No, everybody's running away from things that might get them involved in a lawsuit. We don't know, but there is clear fear in that taking place. And that's why you hear a lot of companies saying we're no longer doing those DEI programs. Fine. If they were involved in target setting or quotas or whatever, Yes, good riddance. But don't run away from the core philosophy, which we all should double down on.
No, that's actually a very clear way of looking at things in a very muddied situation right now, and I'm glad that you brought that up, and I think that's important to continue to speak that way with that level of clarity, because you can see again it's words and how some of those words get a little bit jumbled.
They do.
So now, going into 2025, I mean,
Yeah.
it's always the crystal ball thing is always a bit difficult. But we see trends, trends don't just pop up, although sometimes in marketing, I think they do. But what do you think would be a little bit different, or what are the concerns on the minds of marketers as we go into the new year?
Well, I think it's not so much concerns, but I kind of flip it around and say what kind of opportunities are we really able to look at? And I would say that there is optimism, but it's guarded. And I think that I'm qualifying it as being guarded is because there hasn't necessarily been a level of consistency in the forecast of what was taking place. I mean, we've talked about having recessions in 2024, which never materialized. We've talked about inflation upsetting investment spending, yet we're closing 2024 on a high note of growth in advertising and marketing spend. So there is a lot of inconsistency about where does truth really lie. I tend to be optimistic about what I'm seeing, and why? Because I think that the economy is pretty healthy for the most part. Inflation has not returned all the way down, but when you're in the 2-ish range percent of inflation, that's a good place to be because you're essentially now indicating that the environment is becoming more stable. Unemployment is still relatively low. It may have creeped above 4%, but that's still a very, very good number. So we have a high level of employment. We have a lowering of inflation. So the economic environment is improving, so to speak. Interest rates continue to decline, albeit somewhat slowly. Even now, people are saying, well, how much should we be taking? We've done 2 cuts. We may have a third soon, and we'll see about how 25 lays out. But I think there's the caution is that people are saying, well, let's take them down, but let's take them down slowly and see that we don't reignite inflation to a great degree. But what I do think we're seeing within the opportunity side is where I'm very optimistic is I do think marketers are becoming increasingly sophisticated. Now, I contrast that with a few years ago where there was great sophistication in the marketplace, but I didn't think the marketer community, the brands, had fully caught up with that. In fact, many of them seem to be dizzied by um, technology and transparency issues that we spoke about before, uh, inconsistent levels of measurement and a lack of standardization. So, on one hand, we look at the media environment, and there is a booming area called retail media that marketers are flocking to. And there's over 200 retail media networks across the industry. Maybe if it's even gotten closer to 300 by now. The problem with that, with the opportunity is that it's apparently working as a greater degree of investment is going in that direction. But on the flip side, there's no standard for measurement. There's no way to consistently measure one retail media network versus another. And so that is an area of focus for the ANA and for the measurement industry is how do we bring a level of consistency to retail media? We've talked about principal media as being something which is expanding very rapidly and kind of goes at the other major event in 2024 is the recent agency merger in Omnicom and IPG, assuming that goes through. Well, as we think about all of that, where is all of that intellect shaking out in terms of how much media will agents buy and then essentially resell to marketers? Is it of high quality? Does it provide the return on investment that marketers are looking for? And does principal media really represent the media buy that marketers need in order to optimize their connection to consumers and customers? Those are all legitimate questions, but what we do see is a greater degree of understanding and sophistication by the marketers to be able to delve into those areas, experiment with it, to assess whether these things actually work for their respective organizations. And something which I mentioned before, there seems to be a greater level of understanding about data and the use of data, ensuring that data is transparent and understood, that there is a better deployment for data clean rooms and how that can lead to better marketing decisions. And so I do see a ramping up of that level of sophistication at all levels. Yes, the small to medium sized companies probably trail the larger ones, but the curve is certainly trending upward, which leads to my optimism. My caution is, how well will it be deployed? Will those decisions be as effective as is necessary? And some of that may get played out in a kind of unusual way. Will we actually see less CMO turnover? We've seen a lot of that discussion happen, where the turnover among CMOs has been high in the past. My sense is that it's slowing, which is a good thing. It means that certain things are sticking, and there's hopefully a greater degree of connectivity with the CFOs and the CEOs. But it kind of can be an indirect measure as to whether their respective institutions are catching on to that level of sophistication and doing a better job at it.
I find that very interesting, and my personal indicator always was, in terms of CMO turnover, how many CMOs are actually becoming CEOs or presidents.
There.
And I think that we're seeing some more of that. And sometimes, it's all in a title, but I think that is certainly showing the importance of marketing within the corporation and the function that it serves and the breadth in which it does. It's interesting when you talk about opportunities, and you talk about levels of sophistication, and it makes me wonder then, is marketing then at a certain inflection point in our lifetime, where all of this technology and measurement and the science of it all is now moving it to a different place, so that we're actually almost defining it differently than we did 20 years ago. Now, I know everything evolves and everything changes. And as you mentioned, just like AI, how it affects all of business, not only just the business of marketing.
Right.
But I get the feeling, I mean, we've both been dedicated to this field for a long time, that there's something that is changing on so many levels that it's not scary. It's important for the discipline of marketing, that it is so much more important. Or, I mean, that's just my take on it, but I'm curious. And inflection points are always interesting. You kind of point to them after the fact, but I just sense we're going through something that's very different.
I think you're right. I think that there is, I'm not sure it's an inflection point. It may be, but what I do see is a better, or at least my sense is, there's a better level of level setting. And I think that there is a greater degree of understanding about the entire marketing and media supply chain, where that is becoming less of a mystery to the brand marketers in particular. When you think about evolution or any type of technology, behavior lags. Just think about the adoption of the personal computer. I mean, it took years for having everybody to have a laptop. We went from pencils to word processing stations, where you had assistants typing things on PCs. And then eventually, it cascaded to everybody, where everybody had a PC and stopped using a pencil and a calculator in order to get their work done. That takes time to be able to do that. I do think that this is where you're going to see the transformative power of AI in many respects, providing that degree of level setting. And AI, we know, is an inflection point, is an important one. But if it has the power and potential to continue to demystify the technologically based media supply chain in particular, I think, yes, I do think that is a great opportunity for the client side marketer community to succeed. And which I've said quite a bit in this conversation. And let me just reiterate why that's so important. Very simply, when brands win, everybody wins. When brands lose, everybody will likely lose. And the reason is that it's the marketer's money that's feeding the industry. If the marketers have more money because they're successful, more money will go to the agencies, to the publishers, to the ad tech community, to the platforms. Everybody wins because it comes from the same source, or most of it does for that matter. And I think there's a greater degree of understanding that client success is critical for us, for this industry to evolve appropriately. Because when there's more money for investment, to be able to penetrate those barriers of understanding, those barriers will be pierced. We've seen that time and again. It's a question of the speed and the rate of it. But AI could be one of those clarifying moments that accelerates the speed. As I said before, in a very short span of time, there's been roughly a 10% productivity improvement. That's massive when you think about it in 2 years, with probably still a smaller percentage than we'd like of people that are directly applying AI to their respective business streams. Well, just think what the future can bring with rapidly increasing adaptation to all of that, and then leveraging that to make even more profound business decisions because it provides the insights that marketers may have missed before, that may demystify the way the agencies have come up with their respective recommendations. We don't know. I mean, the world is our oyster right now, but it's the reason I think optimism prevails, because we're finally starting to say, I understand that now. And I'm seeing that more and more as the ecosystem starts to evolve.
No, I think you're right about the insights part. I mean, we used an AI judge in one of our awards just to see how it compared to the human thinking. And it was interesting, again, the insights that we got. And we also enabled it to look at all of the winners to see what kind of trends it saw. And it just came up with very, very interesting things that we may have missed.
Okay.
Because as humans, you respond to the emotional, or you respond to the things that you have the greatest experience with, or you respond to something that's in your memory. And I'm not saying that's bad. You remember that someone tried something similar 10 years ago and the results were not as good, and that might influence the way that you look at something new. And that's all very useful, but the combination of the two is quite interesting. We've talked a lot about science and technology.
Right.
Let's just take a second on something a little softer. Okay.
Sure.
Does purpose still matter?
Oh, yeah. Oh, without question. To me, purpose is the underlying grounding for the authenticity that a brand conveys. We can never turn our back upon what a brand communicates. And if it communicates a purpose, all of our studies and analyses suggest that a brand performs better because it creates a bond with the consumer or the customer. Purposeful marketing is critically important to what it is that we do. And if done, as I said, authentically, that bond can get cemented in a material way. That you more than anyone would know that marketing makes a world of difference, and at the cornerstone of your core thesis is purposeful marketing, being able to do the good things with your brand beyond profits and revenue, uh, people have the ability to distinguish that and understand what that means. And that's meaningful. That's very, very meaningful. There is, we as consumers are pounded with marketing messages every day. I don't even know what the volume is anymore. We've kind of lost count, whether it's coming through digital sources or linear sources or whatever. But when a brand can distinguish itself through its level of purpose to individuals, to society at large, it can really win big. Sometimes it brings the passion of what we were talking about before, of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We saw that big time with the WNBA earlier this year. And the notion of gender now rising to the level of men's basketball in college and even surpassing it in the NCAA finals was breathtaking and thrilling, and it galvanized the country in a way that sports can do, as we talked about the Olympics as being another defining moment. But it's more than just equality. It's many things. It's sustainability. Sustainability has kind of lost its dominance in terms of the headlines giving way to AI, but still is a fundamental um, is a foundation for what we need to think about as we market. Are we essentially helping the planet through successful, sustainable marketing that grows our businesses as well as grows our affinity with the environment? Some great work this year came out of Scope 3 and other technology-based organizations that demonstrated that when you more effectively use programmatic media, you can reduce the carbon footprint quite materially. And that's something that everybody should know. Those studies are clear cut. And, we are going to have to reconcile, just kind of taking a right turn off of this conversation, the fact that AI uses an incredible amount of power, electricity. How do we deal with that from a sustainable standpoint? The productivity of AI contrasted against the increased power usage, affecting the sustainability for us that we all seem to have. But overall, I do think that purpose is still front and center of many of our consideration. I'm sure some brands have kind of stepped away from it as it may not prove to be as much of a driving point in their brand success. But I still think that there is quite a substantial amount of our industry that adheres to its principles and its foundations.
Yeah, and I think in a world of technology, that is the point of the humanization of business, and that emotional connection that brands have with people. I mean, marketing is about people. It is about what the consumer cares about. So that cuts through, that human element is what cuts through all of this. Well, look, we've been talking for a long time, so I've got two quick questions.
Yeah, sure, by all
to
means.
end things on, okay? And I have asked you these in past years, but
Sure.
let's see. Okay. If you had a wish list for the industry and a limited budget, what would you do?
What would I do? It's an immensely important question. The fact that it's an unlimited budget gives me great latitude to suggest that we put a chunk of that behind talent. I am a massive believer that brand performance and brand success is incumbent more about talent than anything else that we do within this industry. Great talent generates great results. I'm absolutely convinced that that equation exists, although I've never seen an empirical study that demonstrated it. But I'm everything in my bones suggests that one is connected to the other. So whether it's training and development or leadership skills or whatever it is, we have to enhance the capabilities of our talent. Capability enhancement is far high on the list than anything else. In fact, there was a CMO study done almost to your question that said if you were given $1 million, where would you place that $1 million? Open ended. And the leader was talent. It was there were a lot of other competing things, but 17% of the CMOs said they put it against better talent or enhancing talent. But since I have an unlimited budget, I will reiterate the 8 areas that are critically important to us, which are learn how to become better brand builders. Um, and that means understanding the economic value of your brand and how to influence that. It's an art that we've lost complete sight of. What does a successful brand look like? What are the characteristics of a successful brand? I don't think we really know that well enough. And it's an area of focus that the industry needs to place, and I think is an area of focus for the ANA. Media, we spoke about media before. It's huge, it's wide, it's mysterious in some ways. I would demystify the media landscape to accelerate that level of investment, which includes multicultural investment, which is very much short-sighted. The troika of data technology and measurement continues to have to ramp up big time. We're making great progress there, but that to us is our future. Business to business needs to get out of the shadows of its big sister B2C and grow up. And there is a lot of great sophistication in B2B. Many people just do not know it and has become an important priority for the ANA. Talent, I mentioned, is an area of great opportunity. And the last one is what we're calling inclusive marketing, which gets at the multicultural area, the ability to reach out to all constituencies, all societies that are out there. It's important to ensure accurate representation of your brand and your business to all cultures and all genders that are out there. And that accurate representation, we know empirically, leads to better business results. So I know it's a big wish list, but you gave me an unlimited budget.
Right, and that's it. Well, now this will be a short one because the last question will be a short one because I think I have the answer already.
Okay.
What one word or phrase do you believe will characterize the coming year? And I'm guessing it's guarded optimism. But,
No, no.
okay.
I do believe that. It's actually 2 words: choice making. I think that what's happening is we as an industry are learning how to make better choices. And in so doing, it elevates my sense as to being an industry that we can count on improving across the board.